Hello, and welcome to Monday. I hope your day is going well so far. My name's Mia Ali, for those of you who don't know me, and I am the founder of the Change Foundry, through which I support women working in purpose-driven, high-stress careers to manage their stress and burnout and rebalance their lives so that they can make the impact they've always dreamed of without sacrificing their own health and well-being. So today on Boss Your Week, I thought it would be really useful to share my top 5 productivity tips for becoming a productivity ninja. That's how I like to see myself in my week. There are like a bajillion productivity techniques available to you on the internet, in magazines, in newspapers, people telling you stuff, managers telling you stuff in training courses. And that, I love reading about productivity stuff. I'm a bit of a geek about it. I love trying out new things. If you've got things that really work for you, then that's totally cool. I'm not saying these are the only 5 productivity tips. There's lots of useful stuff, but I'm also aware that because there are a bajillion tips, it can be quite hard to kind of cut through it and decide what to try and what to use, and you can end up not using anything. Facebook is telling me something that I don't really understand, so I'm going to ignore it because that's how I roll. So so these productivity tips are for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're working in an office, working from home, if you're a professional parent, if you're looking to be more productive in your work life or your home life. All of these things work for you no matter what. And what I've chosen as my 5 tips are the kind of fundamentals that you need to have in place to be productive. And these are fundamentals that no matter which kind of productivity guru you talk to, these are the ones that come up under, they're the kind of basis, the pillars underneath everything else that people talk about. So the first 2 tips that I want to talk about are both around prioritization. Prioritization is agreed by everybody to be an absolutely fundamental part of getting things done and being productive. Because the thing is about productivity, it's not about getting everything done, it's about getting the right things done. Because there's so much noise, isn't there? There's so much stuff given to us at work, there's so much going on with our kids, there's so much going on in our lives, and there are so many things that we want to do because we're purpose-driven people and we're excited about life and we want to do lots of stuff. But we can't fit it all in usually. There's normally more things on our plate than we can fit in. So it's about honing in on the things that are really important. Now, there's tons, prioritization by itself is a huge topic, and there's tons of stuff that I do with my one-to-one coaching clients about really feeling into what are the overall priorities for you in your life and your work, and kind of making really, having very clear visions about that and using that information to help you prioritize. But just for now, just something that you can do on a daily basis. My first tip is that either at the end of the day before or at the beginning of your day, before you start your day, whether that's at work or at home or whatever you're doing, is to write down the top 3 things that you need to get done that day. The top priorities, always 3, always put down 3. And you can use a number of different ways to decide what those might be. Like I say, if you've got a very clear plan and vision, you can look to that. But one way of looking at it is to think, if I was at the end of the day and I had done these 3 things and I was feeling really satisfied, what would those 3 things need to be? If there was nothing else that you did today except those 3 things, what would make you satisfied? So yeah, every single day, write down those 3 things, and then those are the first things that you work on as best to your ability. I know there are interruptions and stuff, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but to your best of your ability, you focus on those 3 things. So that's the first tip to do with prioritization. The second tip that I will give to do with prioritization is, you may have heard of this before, but it's super important and everyone agrees on it. And it's called Eat the Frog. So if you haven't heard about it before, the idea is basically this. It's a bit weird. Bear with me. The idea is that, let's say that today, well, let's say tomorrow, because we're partway through today. Let's say tomorrow, one of the things you have to do tomorrow, no matter what, I don't know what situation has led to this eventuality, but no matter what, you have to eat a frog. Pretty disgusting, right? You don't want to do it. Who wants to eat a frog? That's just weird. Maybe some people do, but that's odd. Right, so you have to eat a frog. And if you wake up tomorrow morning and think, oh God, I have to eat this frog, and you really don't want to, and then you think, right, I'm going to do something else first, and then you put it off and you put it off and you put it off and you put it off till the end of the day, and then it gets to the end of the day and you've got to do it for whatever reason. You have to eat the frog. You eat it, and it's disgusting and unpleasant. Look back over your day. Not only have you had to eat this disgusting frog, but you have basically ruined the entire day by putting it off and like dreading it and having this feeling that there's this thing you're supposed to do and you haven't done it. So what they're saying is, if you need to eat a frog, make sure that is the very first thing you do in your day. It's unpleasant, that's fine, get it over and done with, and then at least for the rest of the day, you don't have to think about it anymore because you've done it, and the rest of your day will be so much more productive because of it. Now, what is your frog? We all have frogs during our week, right? It's the call that you don't want to make because it's going to be really uncomfortable, or the feedback, the negative feedback you have to give to somebody, or the complaint that you have to make, or it's the report you have to write that is like deathly dull, or it's the folding of the laundry. I don't know, whatever is the horrible thing for you to do that you keep putting off. You might not have one every day, but it will come up quite frequently. So when you're writing your 3 things that you have to do, that are your top 3 priorities for the day, have a little look at those 3 things and ask yourself, is there a frog in there? And if there's a frog in there, do it first. I'm going to give you a little bonus tip. This isn't one of my numbered 5 tips, but it always helps me to eat the frog. It's about procrastination. It comes from Mel Robbins. She does a TED talk on it if you want to look. It's called I was going to say the 5-second rule. I don't think it is. Maybe it's called the 5-second rule. But anyway, what you do is, if you're procrastinating about something and thinking, oh God, I really don't want to do that, what happens is you start getting all these thoughts and they go around in your head and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's going to be like this, and oh, I've actually got this other thing to do. What's really helpful is if you can just stop those thoughts in their track. And Mel Robbins suggests that you do something extremely simple, but I have found it to be very effective. As soon as you find yourself going, oh, I don't want to do it, you count backwards from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you just do the thing. You start it, like you start typing on that report, or you start dialing on the phone to call that person that you have to make the complaint to, or whatever it is. And the countdown just stops your thoughts in its tracks. It sounds really basic, but it really, really works. So if you've got to eat the frog and you start with those thoughts in your head, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and start going, and then soon the frog will be eaten and you can get on with your day. Okay, so that's the first 2 tips to do with prioritization. Obviously a huge topic really by itself, but those are 2 very practical things that you can do on a daily basis. My next 2 tips are around focus, because once you've prioritized things, the next kind of challenge for you is to stay focused on those 3 things that you wrote down and not kind of go off on tangents or get interrupted by people or do other things to put off doing what you need to do. And between them, prioritization and focus, these are the two things that all of the productivity gurus kind of agree on as being really fundamental. So the first tip, it's tip number 3 now. Tip number 3 to do with focus is please stop multitasking. I know there's this like thing where they go, oh, women are really great at multitasking. No one is great at multitasking. I think women often are forced to multitask because they get given too much stuff to do. But there has been like numerous research done on this topic, and it has been proven time and time again. Our brains just can't multitask. You can try doing lots of things at the same time, but you end up doing everything not quite as well as you could have done. And one of the things that very successful people do is they learn to focus really well. So it's easy to say, not so easy to do. So here are some underneath this. Here are my best kind of tips for focusing. One that works for me and a lot of people, and I really encourage you to try it out and see if it works for you, and you can look it up, there's loads of good information on it, is something called the Pomodoro technique. And I can't remember who came up with this, but basically the person who came up with this, the reason it's called Pomodoro technique is because the timer that they used originally was shaped like a tomato. So that's why it's called the Pomodoro technique. And people use different timescales with these, so you can find out what works well for you. But basically the idea is, and the way I use it, is that you set a timer for 25 minutes. And once that timer starts, and you kind of decide what you're going to be doing in that 25 minutes. So let's say you've written down your 3 things that you're going to work on today or do today in your life. And let's say you've got a frog that you need to eat. Right, okay, I'm going to set my 25-minute timer and I'm going to work on my frog for that 25 minutes. And I'll explain how it works first and then why it works. So then you work on it for 25 minutes. When the timer goes off, you stop. No matter what, it doesn't matter if you're still halfway through it. You stop when the timer goes off, and you have 5 minutes to, get up from wherever you are and have a stretch, or go and get your cup of tea, or look out the window, or just take a break from whatever you're doing. And then you can come back in and do another Pomodoro and another Pomodoro. And there's different ways of stitching them together. Some people will do like 4 Pomodoros in a row, and then they'll have an hour's break, like maybe that's lunchtime. And one of the really good things that happens is, let's say you're 10 minutes into your Pomodoro and something comes to mind that you need to do. Well, you know that in 15 minutes time the timer is going to go off and you could get onto that. So you just note it down on a piece of paper and then you continue doing whatever you were going to do for that Pomodoro. And because 25 minutes isn't very long, you could always postpone something for 25 minutes, right? Some people do 20 minutes, by the way, 20 and 5. So kind of see what works for you and your kind of attention span. But the nice thing is, mentally, it encourages you to put any interruptions that are in your own mind, or even if somebody calls you, you can say, oh, I'm just in the middle of something. Can I call you back in 15 minutes? It allows you to put things to the side. And so you have these little spurts of real focus with some kind of organised breaks in between. Whereas if you say to yourself, I'm going to work on this really boring report, and you're going to sit there for 2 hours, what's the chance that you're actually going to concentrate for that long? The chance that you're going to get distracted is quite high. So yeah, give it a go with the Pomodoro technique and let me know how you get on. It's also very satisfying to have done a bunch of Pomodoros, and there's all sorts of apps and stuff now that you can get involved in, but you can literally just use a timer at its simplest. The 4th tip that I want to give you that relates to focus is, you might be sitting there thinking, well, that's all well and good, Mia, but I work in an office and people are constantly interrupting me, or I'm a busy professional parent and my kids are constantly interrupting me, or whatever. There's lots of things going on, isn't there? So to kind of support your focus, it is really important to manage interruptions as best you can. It may feel like you don't have any control over interruptions, but of course you do. You might not be able to control them all, but there's definitely work that you can do on managing interruptions. So here's a few ideas for you about managing interruptions. Although as I'm thinking, how do you stop kids interrupting? But anyway, go with me. So the first thing, and we all know this, right? But the first thing is, many of our interruptions are from our technology, right? Whether you're looking after your kids or you're working in a busy office or what have you, it's all the notifications. It's the pinging coming up that another email's arrived, or that someone's WhatsApped you or someone's messaged you on Facebook. Even notifications that you've set up for really good reasons, like maybe you've got a meditation app and you've got notifications on there to remind you to meditate or whatever. Turn them all off, all of them. They are distracting you and interrupting you every time they ping off. And I think we all know that, when we're focused and something distracts us and interrupts us, it takes an awfully long time to get ourselves back into the focus. If you're doing Pomodoros, you're only trying to focus for 25 minutes, and you can always go and look at WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever in your 5-minute break if you want. Although I would recommend that you try and keep away from screens as much as you can, but you decide when you look at your messages and emails. Don't let Mark Zuckerberg decide when you look at your messages, because he's not got your best interests at heart. I don't know if you want, isn't there a Netflix documentary? I can't remember what it's called now. I'll put it in the comments, but it's absolutely horrifying how much effort all of these social media and communications companies put into getting our attention. And they don't care what your goals are or what your vision is or what you're trying to do with your life. They just want your attention because they're selling your attention to other people. And even with your emails, if you're getting emails, you're at work, they're not quite so evil as the social media corporations. But your colleagues are trying to get your attention for their priorities. No, you're setting your priorities today and you're working with your priorities. Of course, like in an organisation, you have to work together as a team, but no one's going to go, oh no, I'm not going to bother you because you've got your own priorities on today. They're all thinking about what they need you to do. So if you want to be working on your priorities and scheduling your own time, turn off the notifications and you choose when you look at things. It's also a really helpful exercise to think about who or what generally interrupts you on any given day. If you're not sure, you can actually do a little exercise during your day, and every time you're interrupted, you can note down what that interruption is, whether you're interrupting yourself or whether someone's coming in to see you or someone's calling you or messaging you or whatever it is. And when you write them all down, or when you think about what the typical pattern of interruptions is, you will begin to see areas that perhaps you could do something about. So if there's somebody who constantly comes into your office asking you questions, you could perhaps have a word with them and say, oh, I'd really love a weekly meeting with you at a regular time, and then you can deal with all of their questions at one time, for example. Perhaps there needs to be some conversations had with your team about who gets what emails and when, or when you can talk about, you can actually say, I am trying to increase the amount of time that I can do focused work. So I'm going to be answering my emails at these points during the day. If there's anyone who's in the habit of sending you WhatsApps or emails or what have you for kind of emergency things that need to be done straight away, you can maybe talk to them about calling you for those instances, because you're not going to be checking your messages as often as you have been. There's all sorts of things you can do, but just doing a bit of a review of where your interruptions tend to come from can be a really useful exercise for you to then have some thoughts about how to reduce those interruptions. And there may be interruptions from yourself. I have a classic thing of when there's something that I'm having to work on that I'm finding a bit of a slog, if my phone is anywhere near me, I'll be like, oh, I'll just check my messages. You know, I have to do social media and stuff for my business, so it feels like it's actually a work task, but of course it's not a work task. Well, it is a work task, but I'm just distracting myself in that moment because I don't want to be doing the thing I'm doing. So I very simply, I just move my phone somewhere else when I need to focus, so that I can't just quickly pick it up and start tapping away. Right, so we've gone over prioritization and focus. My last area, my kind of fifth tip, and my last area, which again is something you can do a lot with, but I'll just give you some ideas, is automation and routine, which sounds very like robots or corporate or something, but really it's very helpful in all areas of your life, from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed. And this idea is really based around the fact that we have to make thousands of decisions every day, from the clothes we put on, to the food that we eat, to when we eat that food, to whether we do this or that or the other, or when we'll go outside, or whether we'll go and exercise today, or blah, blah, blah. Like there's like thousands of decisions to be made every day. And there is this thing you may have heard of before called decision fatigue. And the idea is basically that as you go through your day, making more and more and more decisions, you get tireder and tireder and tireder, and your quality of your decision making gets worse and worse and worse, which is a shame if you need to be making some important decisions at the end of the day. So the idea with automation and routine is just to take away as many decisions as you can from yourself. So for example, so there are I'm going to talk about Mark Zuckerberg again for some reason. I don't know why he's featuring so much today. But him and Steve Jobs are very famous for wearing the same thing every day. And basically, they wear the same thing every day. I think it's kind of like a dark t-shirt and jeans for Mark Zuckerberg, something like that. And basically that means that on any given day, he doesn't have to think about what he's going to wear. He just goes to his very big wardrobe full of lots of dark t-shirts and jeans, and then he just picks one out, and he doesn't have to think about it. He doesn't have to use any of his decision-making energy on clothes. Now, I have to admit that you probably didn't notice, I'm guessing, but from October to the end of the year, I wore the same wool dress every single day for 100 days. It was part of a challenge for the company Wool, and I wore the same dress every single day and nobody noticed. Now, that might be horrifying to you. You might really love clothes and you don't want to wear the same blooming dress every day. That's fine. But just looking at it in a more realistic kind of sense, you could have a work uniform or a daytime uniform that you use when you're being a parent, which you know that you have certain things that you wear every week, and they're like in a certain part of your wardrobe, so you don't have to think too much about what you're going to wear on a given day. You might say to yourself, during my work week, I'm going to have the same breakfast every day, even though it's not very interesting, but it's just one less thing to think about. Or I'm going to have cereal on Mondays, porridge on Tuesdays, toast on Wednesdays, and you just make a routine. So you know every day, oh, it's Wednesday, I'm having toast, and you don't have to think about it. There are so many things that you can kind of get into a routine. And I know that for some people, including myself, the very word routine makes you rebel. And you're like, no, I'm a free spirit. I don't want to have loads of routines. The thing that I have learned is that routines, when applied to all the boring shit in your life, routines actually give you freedom for the more interesting things in your life. So don't be afraid of routine, even if you are a free spirit. So I invite you to look at your day. There's so many places that you can use routine and automation that I'd almost recommend looking at bits of your day at a time. So look at your morning routine and think, right, what could I just put into place that's the same every week? I would also direct you to, I did a Boss Your Week a few weeks ago on calendaring, time blocking, kind of using your, I'll post it in a link in the comments below. Basically putting everything that you want to do into your calendar, and this fits in really nicely with routines. So I even have stuff like on Wednesday night, I even have in my calendar, take the bins out after I do the bedtime routine with my son, and I've even put like what bin it is in my calendar so that I don't, because I was for ages I kept forgetting to put the bins out, and then I'd hear them on Thursday morning and I'd be running outside in my pyjamas with the bin, and I'd have to be looking up on the council website every week to go, what colour bloody bin is it this week? Is that a good use of my time? No, I have much better things to do than thinking about my bins. So however dull that sounds, I don't have to think about them anymore because I've put them in my calendar and I've made it a routine. So all the boring stuff, make a routine out of it, and then you can use your creativity and passion to do the stuff that is much more interesting. Okay, so that's that. Those are my top 5 tips. So I'll just run through them quickly again. So with prioritization, pick 3 things at the start of the day that you are going to focus on. Just 3 things. Of course, you might end up doing more, but like focus on 3 that you know that you're going to be satisfied with if you've done them by the end of the day. Eat the frog is tip number 2. Get out of those 3 things, if there's a frog in there, get that thing done first. It won't be nice. I'm not going to pretend it's going to be nice, but it'll be so much better when you've done it. Tip number 3, stop multitasking. Doesn't work. And you can use the Pomodoro technique to help you do that. Tip number 4, reflect on what interrupts you during the day and see where you can reduce those interruptions. And the first thing you should do about that is turn off all notifications on your phone, on your laptop. I wish you could turn off notifications from your children, but that doesn't work, unfortunately. And tip number 5, have a little think about the different parts of your day and think about what boring and routine stuff you could automate for yourself. Now, one thing that I always say is that productivity techniques are really, really useful, and they really help us to do the things that need to be done. They really help us to move towards our goals. They really help us to make space for what's important for us. However, they are a tool to support us to create the life we want. They're not a be-all and end-all answer. And what can sometimes happen, or very often actually, is that when we have a lot going on and we feel like we're on a bit of a hamster wheel and we're a bit stressed out and there's just tons of stuff on our plate, we can try using productivity techniques to get all of that stuff done. And we're basically relying on productivity techniques to do more, to fit more in. If I just were more efficient, then I could do more with my life. I could do all these things on my plate. And I actually really don't encourage you to try and do more. I really encourage you to try and do less and let things go that aren't getting you towards your goals. Obviously, there's always some stuff that we have to do that maybe we don't want to, but we have to do it to get to our goals. But there is a whole bunch of stuff that we could let go to create more space for us. So I really encourage you to use productivity as a supporting technique to creating your more balanced life, not to just try and do more and more and more and like run ever faster on the hamster wheel. We want to get off the hamster wheel. We don't want to be turning it faster. Does that make sense? So those are my 5 tips for you, and just a little bit of general information about productivity. Let me know in the comments below what you got out of that, and if you have any productivity techniques that have really worked for you, then feel free to share them. I'd be really happy to hear from you. And I look forward to seeing you next week for next week's episode of Boss Your Week. Have a great week.